Welcome to the Big Bear Homestead. Today is episode number 17 in the Predator Control on the Homestead series. So today, we're talking about setting traps. Okay, we're going to take a step back for a second what we were doing. I know I showed you guys a basic real quick, how to set a coon cuff and what to look for, and we were going to do the number ones this week. But we got contacted by Urban Girl Mireya, and she was telling us, she was sharing with us how much she really enjoyed this series, but there's always a but when somebody says that, you know, that I really enjoy your videos, but, well, she's extremely intimidated by these traps. She says that she just absolutely stresses out worrying about us when we're setting these traps because she doesn't know anything about them. She doesn't know how to set them, what makes them up, what the parts are, any of that. And I got to thinking, you know, I bet 98 to 80% of my viewers are just like Mireya. So with that in mind, that's what we're going to go over today. Okay, all these traps all have some major things in common. But before we get into that, whether it's pre-season, post-season, or during the season, which is trapping season that I'm referring to, there's a tool that you want to have, no matter if you're handling footholds, coon cuffs, or Conibears, and that's leather gloves. And the reason why you want to put leather gloves on is that way you do not transfer any of your human scent on to the trap, because let's face it, we're dealing with predators, we're dealing with animals, and their whole world evolves around their nose, eyes, and ears. All of those are real keen senses with these critters that we're trying to catch, so we want to put the advantage in our favor as much as possible. Now, with that being said, whether I'm talking about the coon cuff, a MB550, a Duke number 4, double or single long spring, or either one of these three Conibears, they've all got some things in common. They all have dogs, which is this part right here, and we'll go over what his job is. They all have some type of a spring. They all have levers. They all have jaws, and they all have triggers or pans and an anchoring type of system. Okay, so let's go over these parts, what they are and what they do. Okay, let's start with the dog. The dog is this little part, this little guy right here on the back of this Duke number 4, this straight piece of metal. Okay, he's there on the number 4. He's right there on the coon cuff. He's right there on a long spring. Right there on the 550. There on the number 1. And right here on your Conibears. Now, what is the purpose of this dog? Well, his whole purpose is to hold your trap open. This Duke number 4, I'm going to set this monster right here. I'm going to go ahead and set him first, get it out of the way. Boop. Okay, he's holding this back jaw down. He's connected with the pan, and he's holding this back jaw down. This is what keeps your trap open. This is the basic starting point for your trap. He does it with the Connies as well. Here's the 110. Boop. Hold your trap open, ready to fire. Okay, that's the whole purpose of the dog. Okay, so we talked about the dog. Okay, so let's talk about the levers, or the springs. Most of your footholds are what's called a coil spring. They have springs that coil up. This is just a 2 coil, and then you have a spot that you could slap 2 more on here to make it a 4 coil trap that makes it really strong. Most of the times you do that when these coils are starting to wear out. And what those coils do is give the trap its power, its holding power, and its speed. In your coon cuff, it's right down here. Okay? Now, there are other traps, because when you set these, I'm going to set the number 1. See? He's even got little coils. All your tension comes from those coils. Because when you press these levers down, these levers are connected to your coil springs back here. Okay? So now it's put the tension on the coil spring, which the coil spring wants to push these levers up, which want to make this jaw close, but the dog is holding that down with the help of the pan. But you have different, not all of them are coil. Your long springs, okay, your lever is your spring, okay? And they set the same way. You gotta compress your spring, your lever, okay, to put the tension on the jaw, which is held down by the dog. The dog is held in place by the pan. And in your Conibears, they're no different. These are your springs and your levers all in one, kind of like that long spring there. They, same way. This is your trigger or your pan. Your dog is holding on to that. And then in returns, keeps your springs collapsed. Now your trap is ready to fire. Okay, so now that we've talked about the dog, the levers, and the springs, let's talk about the jaws and the pan. Okay, so let's talk about the pan or the trigger real fast. Okay, the pan on your footholds, they come in different sizes depending on the size of the trap, and it's this part right here. Okay, this is the pan. This is what your dog connects into in order to hold the jaws down. Now your jaws are obviously these right here. Okay, you look at this one. This is your jaw. Your upper jaw, which is the dog that goes on, and your lower jaw, which you can move freely. Same way with your Connies. Okay? Jaws. Okay? And your trigger is these two dangly things right there that connect, that your dog clips onto in order to hold your jaws open. Even with the coon cuff, okay? Here's your jaws. Because this is a piece of wire that goes in a half moon that when you collapse it down, like such, you put the dog in the trigger, which is nothing more than another piece of metal down in here that the raccoon or possum will grab a hold of and pull up on. It fires. Now, the coon cuff acts just like a handcuff. And then that piece of wire pins the hand back to this back point of the body of the trap. Okay, so now we've covered the dog, the springs and levers, the pan and the jaws, let's talk about the different types of traps and the anchoring systems. All right, let's cover the different types of traps that I have right here. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why didn't you do that first right off the bat? Because I wanted to cover the things that they all had in common right off the bat. Now, here's where the traps start to differ. Obviously, the Conibears are different whether you're talking about the 330 here, which I'm getting ready to set, the 220, which is right here, or the 110. These are what we consider lethal traps. Now, the 330 is the most dangerous one of them all. This trap, if the safeties weren't on right here, has enough power, it could break my femur without even trying. These are lethal, body gripping kill traps. Okay? They don't have levers on the side. Their springs are their levers. Okay? So it's all in one. But they still have jaws, they still have dog, they still have a trigger, they still have the springs. And they still have a way to anchor them. But as you can see, they also come in 3 different sizes. Okay? Now, let's talk about some footholds here. Okay? You have the small number 1. Okay? His jaw size is obviously smaller than that of the Duke number 4. Reason being is the type of critter that you're going after. Also, he's not base plated, and his anchoring system is off to the side. And he doesn't have a drowning washer on him, and he doesn't really have a drive stake or anything like that. He just has a hoop that you could tie off some trapping wire to a tree or to a rock or whatever. And he is also what they call a coil spring trap, which we did before. Okay? Now, you also have right here your Victor 1.75. Now, this used to be my go-to trap for foxes, cats, and coyotes. Okay? His jaw spread, which is from here to here, is bigger than the number 1. His pan is bigger than the number 1. And his coils are obviously bigger. But he is also what they call base plated. And I should have showed you this before I said it, but this right here is called laminated. And basically the reason why it's laminated is to make these upper parts of the jaw stronger. And he's also what they call offset, which is if you look at this MB550, the jaws don't touch. Okay? He's base plated for more strength, and his anchoring system can be either put on with a ground stake, you could put a drag, which is kind of like a boat anchor that you attach with a very long chain, and then as the animal tries to run off, he's dragging it and it's catching up and he doesn't get very far. Or you can use some airline cable, which a lot of guys in the South are starting to do. Long airline cable, big thick airline cable, and then wrapping it around a tree or a fence post and securing him that way. But there's obviously a size difference, okay? Then you have the Minnesota brand 550. Now this is my new go-to trap when it comes to cats, fox, coyote. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, I don't have to laminate the jaws because as you can see, they've already made this jaw a lot thicker. Okay? It's offset, I've already showed you that. But it's also what they call night latched. Now, listen and you'll hear it. And I'll probably jump. Okay, you heard that? That click? Okay, the reason why that's a modification. They put a notch on the dog and on the pan because a lot of trappers run long canine lines, and sometimes they're out there checking them and it's still dark or it already has turned dark on them, and they got to keep this pan level, and so they would night latch it so they would hear that click and they know that pan was level. And again, this jaw spread is just barely bigger than that Victor 1.75. This trap is barely legal in Georgia. It meets the requirements. Almost. Now, to set on land. This is what they call a Duke number 4 trap. This one is specifically, at least for here in Georgia, we have to use this in the water. So this is beaver and otter. It's not base plated. It's not fancy night latched. And the lever's in the same, except for the anchoring system is what we call a drowning washer, where the beaver will step on the trap and he'll automatically swim to the bottom to where he's going. This slides down the wire, and then when he tries to swim back up, it pinches on the wire and he can't get back up, and he'll asphyxiate and die. But as you can see, his jaw spread is a lot larger than the MB550. This is for the back foot catch of a beaver, at least here in Georgia. Now, we have our long spring traps. This is a single long spring, and long spring, because it's not a coil, your lever is also your spring, okay, just like with your Connies. It's a single long spring. This small guy is used more for muskrat, mink. You could hold a coon in this, a small coon, a possum, probably maybe even a small skunk. But it's more for your smaller critters. Same as the other number 1. It's just a hoop. His anchoring system is you just tying him off somewhere, tying him on a rock, makes him swim to the bottom. You can get them tangled up in the bottom, whatever. Then you have the double long spring. Now, this guy is more for your beaver and otter, but let's get him set. One major difference. See how much smaller his jaw spread is? This is set up for a front foot catch. And there's your drowning washer on this guy. Now, how do you set up differently from the back foot and the front foot? We'll show you that in a completely different video on setting beavers. Okay, and then your coon cuff. You guys see me set that in the coon cuff video, and you know how we anchor it. This is now probably the most dangerous table in the world, at least for a critter. But those are the real differences between the traps that we use here on the Homestead, everything that they've got in common, and how to set them. Okay, well there you have it for this week's video. Please, if you guys have any questions whatsoever when it comes to these different traps, how to set them, why is some base plated and laminated, why is some not, please leave it in the comments. When it comes to the base plating, because I don't think I touched on that, I'm going to touch on that real quick. When it comes to the base plating, that's more for your canines, your big coyotes, and your wolves, for when they step on it after multiple times and they start jerking and pulling, they have a tendency to bend the trap. They bend that trap, then the jaws come loose a little bit, or it sets the jaws off just a little bit, and it could, one, they'll be able to pull, they could possibly be able to pull out, break the trap, and two, they could possibly do that and injure themselves at the same time, and you don't want an injured animal running around. So that's just to give that trap extra strength. But in all seriousness, guys, I do not want you guys to be intimidated by these traps in any way, shape, or form. These are great tools to have on the homestead when you're trying to protect your chickens and ducks and piglets and everything else that we have on our homestead. So please, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I promise you, I will get them answered. Thanks for coming by the Big Bear Homestead, and like always, have a nice day. Okay, now let's cover the different types of the traps first. Or